I ride a lot of carbon bikes here in my day job at Cycling Weekly, but on a Sunday morning you're more likely to find me heading out to some far-flung chintzy cafe with my club mates on a steel bike. Steel is real is a bit of a cliche now, but I just love the thought that my bike was made by a local frame builder in a small workshop instead of popping out of a mould in a huge factory on the other side of the world. In my opinion, some of the best steel frames were made by Roberts in Croydon from the 1960s until 2015 when they closed their doors. So when a club mate of mine said that he was wanting to get rid of his Roberts, I could just hardly get round to his house fast enough. I was knocking on the door virtually before he'd finished typing the WhatsApp message. My club mate had the frame made to measure in 2001 out of Columbus Max tubing, which was the stiffest tubing there was at the time. It was his #1 race bike, and when I first saw it, it was black but had a sort of a brown growth on it from sitting in his garage for years. It really needed rescuing pretty badly. So I took it to Colourtech in Dartford to be blasted and resprayed by Dave Crow, who actually used to spray Roberts frames for Roberts themselves before they closed. So I knew the frame was in really good hands, and he's a great sprayer. I really rate his work. And here it is. I'm really pleased with it. I asked Dave to copy a Trek Project 1 paint scheme that I really liked, and I think he's done such a good job of it. It's actually even nicer than the original Trek. He used automotive 2-pack acrylic enamel paint over a metallic base coat, and it just looks really stunning, especially in the daylight. And the cost to do the frame and the fork, which is a carbon Columbus fork, was £200. And I think that's a pretty fair price for giving a bike like this a new lease of life. There's nothing like the ride of a really good steel bike. The feel of steel is how the saying goes. I've heard it said that really steel is the benchmark for the way a bike should ride, and every other bike is trying to copy the ride of steel, but just making it lighter like carbon does, or making it stiffer like aluminium does. But really, steel is the ride. The workmanship is just such high quality. The fillet brazing is just amazing. One tube just flows into the other really seamlessly. It's really lovely work. It was a race frame, but it actually weighs just over 2 kilos, the frame itself without the fork. And that seems like a hell of a heavy weight these days. It's like twice the weight of a carbon bike. But that was how it was at the time. And I think that really the weight with this type of bike, it doesn't really matter so much. And with what I'm going to be doing on it, which is club runs and fast-paced riding, it's a cafe racer, it doesn't really matter that it's a bit heavier than a carbon bike. Yes, the frame is 20 years old, but I didn't want to build it up into some kind of museum piece out of retro components, NOS that were painstakingly sourced on eBay or anything like that. I wanted it to be a modern bike that I could ride, and that meant a modern group set with modern ratios. Okay, so Shimano, everybody knows that it's great functionally, it works brilliantly, but a frame like this really needs Campagnolo. So I've got a full rim brake mechanical Campagnolo Chorus group set. Chorus is high-end, but it's not ridiculously expensive. It's a little bit more expensive than Shimano Ultegra. You're looking at about £1,250 for the whole group set, but that's a whole £600 cheaper than Record. For about 100 grams extra weight, so it makes a lot of sense. The other thing about Chorus is that it's aimed at keen amateurs rather than pros, which really suits my purposes perfectly. So I've got 52/36 up front, and I've gone for the 11/29 cassette, which is the closest ratio cassette you can get with Chorus, and I'm pretty sure that I'm going to get up any hill in Surrey on a bottom gear of 36/29, which is a lot lower than this bike probably had originally 20 years ago. A Campagnolo group set deserves Campagnolo wheels, and these are the Bora WTO 45s. I've ridden them a couple of times recently on a couple of different test bikes, and they're just some of my favourite wheels at the moment. They are lightweight at just under 1,500 grams, they're stiff, they're aerodynamic, and they have an internal rim width of 19 millimeters, which is wider than the type of wheels that bike was designed for. But I'm pretty sure that they'll just about fit in. The clearance is going to be pretty tight, but in those days, tight clearance was what racing bikes were all about. The more fag paper the clearance, the faster your bike was. I've already got the tyres on these. They're the Vittoria Corsa Graphene 2.0s. They're a really lovely, supple tyre, beautiful rolling, and Italian, which goes nicely with Campagnolo. So these are going to be my tyres. The finishing kit is by Vision, and it's all carbon, and it's very statementy, and it's pretty expensive too. But this is a dream build after all. This is the handlebar I'm going to be using. This is the Vision Metron bar. It's very lightweight at 250 grams. It's very expensive at £350, and I think it's going to look great on this bike. The stem is another Vision stem. It's the Trimax Carbon. It's actually aluminium with a carbon skin. What I really like about it is it's got this little faceplate cover, which has a kind of a look of alien about it. So this stem is for an 1.1 inch steerer, but an old bike like this has a 1 inch steerer. So I've got this shim that I'm going to have to use in the stem to make sure it fits snugly around the head tube. The Vision Metron seat post is another component from Vision's top level range, and it's another money no object component which costs over £200. As for the saddle, I've gone for really what works for me rather than something that's really expensive and showy, and it's this Selle Italia SLR Superflow, which has a nice shape, suits me, and just manganese rails, ordinary manganese rails, that's all I need. It works. I'm going to be wrapping the bars in this Physic Microtex Classic bar tape, which has these nice little perforations that look quite authentic. I used to insist on white bar tape and a white saddle for all my race bikes, but in this case I don't want to distract away from the really beautiful frame. Modern handmade steel bikes have to have a Chris King headset. They're said to last a lifetime, and this one actually is already pretty old. This Chris King 1 inch no thread set is probably about the same age as the bike. It's got to be 20 years old. And this was the first type of headset which replaced the quill stem and the threaded headset, hence no thread set. You can still get them in lots of pretty colors as well, but black is nice for this. And it's the only one that my friend had anyway. So this is the only old part on the bike, apart from the rider. I'm going to use the new Wahoo Speedplay Zero pedals. I really like these. I like the look of them. I like the feel of the free float. I even like the sound of them clipping in and clipping out. And I think these are going to really get me off to a good start with this bike. Okay, so now we're going to head to the workshop and start building it up, and hopefully it's going to be done in time for me to get a ride into the pub later. So here it is, the Roberts Cafe Racer, and I'm really pleased with the way it turned out. It was just really nice to build. The good thing about external cabling is that it's just easy to get them in. You do the run, they pop out the other side. There's no messing around, and I actually really like the look of the cables. There's something about the curve of the cable that really goes so nicely, just actually sets off a steel frame really nicely. You know, why would you want to hide that? I know I chose every component for this bike for myself, so in theory I knew what it was going to look like, but it really has surpassed all my expectations. I think it just looks amazing, and I literally can't stop staring at it. The other thing is, it's really light. It's much lighter than I thought it was going to be. Just under 8.2 kilos, which is just under 18 pounds in old money, and I think that's pretty impressive for a bike with a steel frame, especially a 20-year-old steel frame. So although the cables went in really nicely, we did have a couple of little snags. One of them was with the Campagnolo chain. You have to push in this little chain pin really carefully, otherwise it snaps, which is, yeah, that's what happened. So I haven't had time to go to a bike shop, and I've had to just put in a SRAM Eagle 12-speed power link just here, and you can see that it's there because it's rainbow coloured, so there's no hiding it. Just don't tell anybody. The bar tape. I went for this really nice Physic perforated retro-looking bar tape, but what I didn't realise was that it had the Physic logo on one side of it. And when you do the little clever loop, that means you don't have to use the adhesive strip, the logo has popped out and you can see it. So that's something I'm going to have to change, unfortunately. So does it need any upgrades after this? I mean, I don't think so really. I'm really happy with the way it is. I think probably the next thing I'm going to do is to put some little transparent stickers on the head tube here to stop the cable from rubbing the paint, and also one on the chainstay here too. But other than that, if I win the lottery, I'll upgrade to Super Record, but let's stick with chorus. I built this bike up as what we're calling a cafe racer, which means it's perfect for the club run. It's not for racing. That's what carbon bikes are for. It's just for enjoying the ride, but it's light and fast enough that it can turn a nifty pedal if it needs to. So I'm really looking forward to Sunday when I'm going to ride this bike for the first time with my club. Club run stopped for a long time during the pandemic. I have to say I lost a little bit of motivation, but something new and shiny like this is really going to get things together again for me, and I'm just really looking forward to it. So the overall cost of this build is somewhere around £4,500. Half of that is in the wheels, and unfortunately they come off another bike that I tested and they've got to go back. So I'm going to have to put in a cheaper set of training wheels. It looks like this Sunday could be the only opportunity I get to ride these really nice wheels, but that's life. If you want to ask me any questions about the frame or the build, leave me a comment and I'll answer. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe.